Hey, so it's me, Denisey. Um, in my last video, I talked about downsizing my life and sharing that with everybody on YouTube. And so I'm going to get started with that. I'm not going to tell you about my whole life history, but I worked really hard for everything. Um, Back then, I was really full of ambition. I was full of hope. I was so positive, I was confident, and I was fearless. I came from a very loving family, and I always knew that no matter what, that I could go home, and that was a big deal for me. That was a really important thing. Um, anyway, I moved to Pennsylvania when I was just before my 16th birthday. It was 2 weeks before my 16th birthday. Can you imagine? Can't imagine my kids ever doing that. But I figured out how to survive. I got a job when I was 16 in the city. I loved that job. It was just a little bagel place in downtown Pittsburgh, and it was my first job ever. And I lied to get that job. And I felt like somebody was looking out for me because that that position introduced me to really cool people my own age. Um, it was just, we wore denim aprons and there were plants everywhere, and it was totally my vibe. And it was my first job ever. And we sold bagels and croissants, and I worked with great girls, and I was so young, but it was a good time, and I was just coming into my own and learning about life, and that was great for me, and I loved it. I really did. And you know, uh, I worked there for a good long time, and uh, the person I came here with, that relationship had been breaking up, and I lost that job because I was young and stupid, and I had a real temper issue back then because I was the youngest of 5 kids, and nobody ever listened to anything I had to say, and I was very, and I still carry a lot of that with me now, like, I'm smart enough, listen to me. um, but back then I thought I was smart enough, and I think I was, and I still do, but I'm not a know-it-all, and I ended up losing that job. But anyway, I decided to go back to school because obviously I dropped out when I was 16, and I got my GED, just went and took it and passed it, and signed up for medical assistant school. And that was like a year and a half. And I worked during the day. I went to school at night, took the bus into the city every night for school. And over time, I became an RN. Had worked in healthcare all the way up through that. And, you know, I was really driven back then. I came uh, here after living a very poor lifestyle. You know, my father died when I was very young. My mother had never worked. And it's one of the reasons why I left so young, was because I knew I just had to get out there and earn a living on my own. And I was very, very driven. And I set a lot of goals for myself, and I met every one. Um, I lived below my means, and I could do that because I was used to being very poor. And I always had goals in my mind, and I listened to financial advice, and I had a sense for saving or investing according to what was happening at that time, and I would watch and listen, and, as I became more financially independent, I would uh, listen to those things and act upon them, depending on your, your feelings and your insight towards them and what you think the future has to hold, and listening to sound advice. And, even back then, you could get advice on television, and, there's books and TV, and, you gather information from many, many, many different places, not just from one or two, and you go with your gut and you act upon it. And it's really the only way to save money. You can't just stick your money in the bank, and even now more than ever, as opposed to back then where you could actually save money in a bank. It's really important to be tuned in to what people are saying about our financial future. And I recommend, especially, the youth of today and people that are working, to really gather up that information and see what you think the future has in store, and kind of set some goals, and work towards that for your financial security in the future. But anyway, that's what I did. Well, me and my husband, Kenny. Shout out to Kenny. Um, we bought a house and we paid it off early, um, because that's what they tell you to do. Make those extra payments, live below your means, reduce your mortgage to a 15-year mortgage maybe after you've paid on it for a while. And that's what we did. We got another opportunity for a house right up the street, from a gentleman that had passed away and only had relatives out of town, and they wanted to sell that house because they couldn't fix it up to rent it because they weren't in town. And we offered to buy it, got a really good price, and Kenny is very handy with remodeling, and so we redid the kitchen and bathroom, painted. I'm good at painting, so I painted the whole place, and we got it chip shape for rental property. And we did that, and we saved our money, and we got a financial advisor, which I highly recommend to anybody. And if shout out to my financial advisor, he's helped me and can, create a good base. And at the time, computers were just starting out back then. It was, Kenny was kind of involved in that because he went to computer school, and which was a really smart thing to do back then. And that's what he did. And we kind of got involved early on in computers, way back when Apple computers, the only thing it did was if you pushed a button, it made would put a square up on the screen, or a triangle on the screen, and our worm would go across the screen, and we just thought that was like amazing. Even back then, it was so impressive, like one step above a word processor. It did these things, and we were like, oh, this is the future. And it was. And and we made small investments in what we thought were up and coming markets. They didn't all work out. I mean, we made some investments in U.S. Airways that went to shit, and we made